Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for this lecture 3 of the Cricket South Africa Level 1 course hosted by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Abdullah Steenkamp and my co-presenter for this evening is Tom Mokarosi. The format of the lecture this evening will be as follows. I will cover laws 13 to 17. Tom will then take over and do 18 and 19. And after we've presented our laws, we will then introduce you to our special guest for this evening. He is our poster boy that you saw on our poster. And he is the ICC International Umpire, Allahudien Palekar. And he will be joining us around about 1945 after Tom has presented law number 19. Tom will then ask him a few questions. We will also open the floor if there's any questions that you would like to pose to Allahudien. And then after that, we will then open the floor for a Q&A session if there's any questions that you'd like to ask us with regards to the laws that we've covered for this evening. So to kick off, law number 13, and this covers the innings. When we speak of the number of innings, we are referring to more-day cricket. An example is 5-day test match cricket. We also play 4-day or 3-day cricket, can be played in 2 days or even in 1 day. But there are games that where there are more than one innings. So the law allows for a match to be, can be 1 innings. It can even be 2 innings. And these or this agreement for whichever amount of innings will be for that particular match must be agreed before the start of the game. The law also allows for innings to be a number of overs or even for a period of time. And if there are such agreements, then if it's a 1 innings match, a similar agreement needs to apply to both innings. So if you play in a 1 innings match, you need to agree side A will bat for 50 overs and side B will also bat for 50 overs. If it's a 2 innings game, you may make an agreement for either the first innings to be a certain number of overs or the second innings to be a certain number of overs, and the same principle apply to if you do decide to limit it to a period of time. I'll use an example to illustrate point number 2. So a few years ago, in our local leagues here in Cape Town, we still played 2-day cricket. So it was a 2 innings match that was played over 2 Saturdays. And there it was decided that the first innings should be limited to 60 overs per side. So once side A gets to 60 overs, and whatever the score was, that innings would then come in, and then side B needs to go bat. There was no limit on the second innings. But you'll find in certain competitions where they do put limits on both innings, like 60 overs in your first innings, and they may decide only 50 or 40 overs in the second innings. The law also allowed for time periods. So you decide, let's say the first innings will be limited to 3 hours per side. So side A will bat for 3 hours, and when that 3 hours is done, side B will then come in, and you may apply something similar for the second innings, or maybe a longer or even a shorter time span for the second innings. But the law allow for these options. Alternate innings. In a 2 innings match, each side needs to take their innings alternatively. You cannot, side A cannot go bat and then side A go bat again It needs to be side A bats in their first innings. Once that innings is completed, side B needs to go bat, and then side A can come bat, and then side B. So the innings should be alternately. There are two exceptions, which we will cover in law 14 and 15. So I'll get there. But in a two innings game, each side shall take their innings alternately. So what is a completed innings? So a side innings shall be completed if the side is all out. If the fielding side takes 10 wickets, that means the side is all out. That means the innings of, let's say, side A is completed. Point 2, when is the side innings also completed? So at the fall of the wicket or the retirement of a batter, there are further balls or overs remaining to be bowled, but there are no further batter available to come in. An example of this, in the second over of the game, the opening bat gets bowled on the finger. The opening bat then retires hurt, leaves the field of play. The next batter comes in. About 60 overs later, the side A is on, let's say, 300 for the loss of nine wickets, and now the 9th wicket fell. So there's only 1 wicket left, and that is the wicket of the opening batter. He didn't come. He didn't resume his innings after the injury. The captain of side A informs you that the opening bat broke his or her finger, and unfortunately will not able to continue his or her innings. So now there are still balls to remaining to be bowled, but side A is only 9 down. But because the injured batter is not able to continue his or her innings, that innings is then completed, even though they are only 9 wickets down. An innings is also completed if a captain declares the innings closed. Innings is also completed when the captain forfeits the innings, and we will handle declaration and forfeiture in the next law. Also, the innings is completed. In the previous slide, I spoke about when you do limit the innings to a prescribed number of overs, let's say 60 overs, both sides in the first innings must bat 60 overs, or there's a number in the second innings, or even a time. Both sides needs to bat for 3 hours in the first innings. If that was the agreement before the game starts, as soon as 60 overs is bowled, the innings is then completed. So these are the 5 instances where a side innings is completed. So the toss. The law tells us that when the toss is about to take place, firstly, both captains need to be present at the toss. That's the first thing. Secondly, the toss needs to happen on the field of play. Thirdly, it needs to be in the presence of one or both umpires. And the window period for the toss is not earlier than 30 minutes, nor later than 50 minutes before the scheduled or rescheduled start of the match. So in terms of the window period for the toss, and let's say the toss is taking, the game starts at 10 o'clock. So that window period that the toss needs to take place according to the law is not earlier than 30, not later than 50. So with our 10 o'clock start, toss needs to take place between 9:30 and 9:45. anywhere in between those the times, the toss can take place. If the captain should ask you at 9:25 for a 10 o'clock start, let's do the toss and get it over and done with. No, you're not allowed to. You will be in contravention of the law. The law only allows for a 15-minute window period, and that 15-minute window period, if it's a 10 o'clock start, is from 9:30 till 9:45. Both captains needs to be there, and it needs to be on the field of play. Traditionally, we toss next to the match pitch, but the law tells us it can happen anywhere on the field of play. So even as you just put your foot over the rope and step inside the field of play, the toss can, as per the law, happen right there, as long as it's inside the field of play. But traditionally, the toss gets done next to the match strip. Now the toss has taken place, and the captain of side A won the toss. The law now tells us that as soon as the captain of side A won the toss, he or she needs to notify his or her counterpart and the umpires immediately of the decision whether to bat or to field. The captain cannot tell you once the toss has taken place, umpires, give me 5 minutes. I just want to quickly go to my coach, or quickly I want to go discuss this with my team. No, as soon as the toss is completed, the captain needs to decide immediately whether he or she is going to bat or bowl. And once that decision is made, whether bat or bowl, it then cannot be changed afterwards. The follow-on. So earlier I spoke about sides batting, the sides innings as being alternatively. So we're meaning side A needs to go bat, then side B, then side A again, and then side B. The law allows for a side to follow on. And I'll explain to you now what follow on means. So follow on means if a side that batted first and that particular side leads by at least 200 runs, that side will have the option, or the captain of that side will have the option of asking the other side to follow the innings. And I'll use an example to illustrate this point. Remember I said if side A bats, or 99% of the time side A bats, and then side B needs to go bat, then side A again, then side B. But there are two instances where the law allows for that not to take place. That the first instance is when the captain has the option to make this other side follow on. So, the example to illustrate point number 1. So, in a 2-innings match of 5 days or more, and that is a test match currently is 5 days. Many years ago, they did play test matches of more than 5 days, but currently the test match spans over 5 days. So in our test match, side A batted first, and side A scored 600 runs, all out. Now side B went into bat, and side A dismissed side B for 350 runs. So now the law tells us that if after side A is batted and they lead by at least 200 runs, side A then has the option of asking side B to go bat again. So in our example, let's say side A scored 600 and side B, they bowled side B out for 200. So how many runs are they ahead? They are 400 runs ahead. According to the law, if the side leads by at least 200 or more, the captain of that side has the option of asking the other side to go bat again. So in my example, because the lead is more than 200, the captain of side A has the option of enforcing the follow on, i.e. to ask the captain of side B to go bat again in the second innings. But importantly here is the lead needs to be at least 200 runs. If it's anything less than 200 runs in a 5-day game, this option is not available. And also, this is an option that's available to the captain of side A. Does not have to take up the option. It is available if the captain feels that he or she wants the other side to go follow on. Another example, side A bats and side A scores 500 runs. They dismiss side B for 301 runs. So the first question, now the captain of side A comes to you and asks you, I would like side B to go follow on. What would your answer be? According to the law, in a 5-day test match, the lead needs to be at least 200 runs. So in our example, with side A scoring 500 and side B getting dismissed for 301, what is the lead here? The lead is 199. So according to the law, the captain does not have the option to ask the other side to follow on because the lead is 199. It needs to be at least 200 runs. The same options will be available in a 2-innings game if in games of shorter duration, meaning not all games are played over 5 days. You do find games played over 3 or 4 days, like in South Africa, the provincial competition gets played over 4 days. There are also 2-innings matches that are played over 2 days, and even 2-innings matches that are played in 1 day. So the option, the follow-on number in a 3 or 4 day game is 150. In a 2-day game is 100 runs, and in a 1-day match is 75 runs. This 1-day game is not referring to a limited over game. It is just a 2-innings match that gets played in a single day. So the same principle applies as we did in point number 1 for 5-day test match. There the lead needs to be at least 200 runs. Same principle apply in a 4-day game, a 3-day game, a 2-day game, and a 1-day game. Just the number is different. So it's 150 in a 3 or 4 day, 100 in a 2-day, and 75 in a 1-day match. Again, as soon as the captain decides that he or she wants to enforce the follow-on, captain needs to notify the opposing captain and the umpires of this decision, and then once this decision is made, it then cannot be changed. So what happens if the first day is lost in a 5-day test match? Let's use a 5-day test match as an example. So the whole of the first day is lost. Play was not called on the first day. Not a single ball was bowled on the first day. So the law tells us if the whole of the first day, and the important part in this particular law is the whole of the first day needs to be lost. So no play needs to happen on that first day. Play was not called on the first day. And if that is the case, how do you determine the follow-on target? You will then look at the number of days remaining in the game. So in the example of a 5-day test match, and play was not called on day 1, so now play will then only start on the morning of day 2 at 10 o'clock. So now there are 4 days left in the test match. So now what will the follow-on number be? Not 200 anymore. It will now be 150. But again, I want to emphasize here, the important thing is the first day needs to be lost. So another example, if play starts on in a 5-day test match on day 1, and day 2, the whole of day 2 is rained out. Not a single ball gets bowled on day 2, and play only starts on day 3 again. You cannot then apply this particular law because it's the second day that was rained out. This law is only applicable if the first day of play is lost. So earlier we spoke about a declaration and a forfeiture. So the timing of a declaration. So the captain of the batting side, he or she may declare the innings close once the ball is dead at any time during that innings. Forfeiture of an innings. So the law allows that a captain may forfeit either of his or her side's innings before the commencement of that innings. And in an earlier slide, we read that a forfeited innings shall be considered a completed innings. So just the difference between a declaration and a forfeiture. A declaration usually happens, the side is busy batting, and then the captain then decides to declare. So after, let's say, side A is 600 for the loss of 2 wickets, so the captain feels, captain would like to declare. That's an example. The side has already batted or is busy batting, and the captain decides he or she wants to end the innings, and the captain can do that by declaring that innings, and that innings will then be considered completed after the captain has made the declaration. A forfeiture is the side has not started batting yet. So a forfeiture happens before the innings of that side commenced. And once a captain decides to declare or to forfeit an innings, that captain needs to notify the opposing captain and the umpires, and once notified, that decision cannot be changed. An example of where there was forfeited innings in a test match. It happened South Africa versus England in the year 2000. Play took place on day 1, and the Proteas or South Africa was 155 for 6 on day 1. Due to inclement weather, there was no play on day 2, 3, or 4. Play could only start on day 5. There was then an agreement by the 2 captains of the time. South Africa was Hansie Cronje, and Nasser Hussain was his English counterpart. And they then decided that South Africa said they will forfeit they will declare their first innings, forfeit their second innings. England will forfeit their first innings, and England will then bat in the second innings. South Africa then set them a target of 249 in 76 overs, and this was chased down by the English with 8 wickets down. And that was an interesting test match because it was later found that there was some match fixing involved between Hansie Cronje and a bookmaker. So the result. So in a 2 innings match, how do you decide who wins a 2 innings game? So what you do is, in a 2 innings game, you add the totals of side A's first and second innings and compare to the 2 totals of side B's first and second innings, and whoever has got more runs wins the game. So side which scored a total runs in excess of that scored in 2 completed innings of the opposing side will win the match. Same principle applies in a 1 innings match. Whoever scored the most runs in a 1 innings match and the innings are completed, shall win the match. There's also a section of the law that allows for the umpires to award a match to a particular side. And let's see when this is possible. So a match shall be lost by either side, which either concedes defeat or in the opinion of the umpires, that side refuses to play. If that is the case, the umpire shall award the match to the other side. So there is a section in the law that gives the umpires the power to award a match to a side if that side either concedes defeat or, in the opinion of the umpires, refuse to play. Okay, but before invoking this law, the umpires needs to consider that the action taken by the players either constitute a refusal to play, and then firstly to go to the captain of that particular side and asking the captain, are you refusing to play? If the captain persists with this particular action, the umpires have power to award the match to the other side. There was one example of this in Test cricket, and let's see what that example is.
Over the last 140 years, more than 2,300 Test matches have been played. Over 1,500 of these have ended in a result. Over 700 have been drawn, 2 have been tied, and only 1 has ended in a forfeit.
The thing I remember about the forfeit test is none of us had a clue what was going on, really.
According to law 16.3.2, a match shall be lost by a side which, in the opinion of the umpires, refuses to play. On August 20, 2006, this rule was invoked for the first time on an afternoon that swung wildly between high drama and farce. An hour before tea on the 4th day, at the end of the 56th over of England's second innings, umpires Darrell Hare and Billy Doctrove asked for a change of ball.
It was one of the reserve umpires came out with a new box of balls. It was clear they were changing the ball. No big deal there. But instead of asking the bowling side to choose the new one, he asked the batting side, and you think, oh, hello, interesting.
The umpires then awarded England 5 penalty runs, confirming that they had pulled Pakistan up for tampering with the ball. The trouble was there was no evidence, no jelly, no dirt, no sandpaper.
A lot of people that looked at that ball have different opinions. Some feel it was clearly tampered with, and some think it was more than just playable. It was a good-looking ball. Others think you can see some evidence of scratching, but none that suggests it's been done on purpose and by hand, or even by a foreign object. So very mixed views.
It was after the tea break, taken more than 15 overs, after the 5-run penalty, that things really escalated. The umpires walked out, the English batsmen walked out, the Pakistanis didn't.
They felt hugely wronged, you know, they weren't sure that whether they wanted to come out.
After waiting for 20 minutes, the umpires walked to the Pakistan dressing room, came back a few minutes later, and took the bails off.
And the match is aborted, or abandoned, or cancelled, or no, wrong, none of that. We hear the match has been awarded to England. Wow.
That wasn't the end of it either. After a protest lasting almost an hour, and following discussions with match referee Mike Proctor, Inzamam Al-Haq finally leads the Pakistan team out again. This time, though, the umpires stay put. They've made their decision, and they're sticking by it.
My view of that was that it was very inflexible. Mike Proctor was the match referee in a very difficult position. I think there should have been an instruction from on high, from the chief executive, chairman of ICC, that this is a unique situation because of the unproven circumstances. In a proven circumstance of a tampered ball and a side refusing to come out, fair enough, but this was unproven.
Several hours after the bails were taken off, the ICC and the English and Pakistan cricket boards confirm in a joint statement that the match had indeed been forfeited. The hits kept on coming. With no evidence to back up the accusation, the ICC dropped the ball tampering charges. But Inzamam was banned for 4 one-dayers for refusing to lead his team out. They also removed Hare from international duty, who in turn threatened to sue the ICC and the PCB for racial discrimination. 2 years later, the ICC overturned the result from a Pakistan loss to a draw, but the MCC refused to recognize this.
It was all incredibly nasty and another stain on the game, and there's never been any concrete proof that Pakistan were in the wrong anyway.
To date, this remains the only scorecard in history to state England awarded the match, opposition refused to play. In the end, though, there was only one real loser: cricket itself.
But in test matches or games where there are 2 or more innings, there can also be a tie or even a draw. So what is a tie? So a tie is when all innings have been completed and the scores are equal. If that is the case, then the game shall be a tie. So the important criteria here is firstly, all innings needs to have been completed. So side A needs to have completed their first innings and their second innings, and similarly side B had to the first innings needs to be completed and the second innings needs to be completed. And if you then add up the scores of both sides' first and second innings and the scores
ladies and gentlemen, it seems like Abdullah has been disconnected. I am going to share my presentation and continue from where he left off. Just give me a minute to get to the point in the presentation where he was.
Tom,
Yes,
I think I lost connectivity.
Okay,
can you
back,
confirm that I'm back online?
Yes, you're back, Abdullah.
And can you confirm that I've explained what a tie is, or do I need to go over it again?
I think you can start that slide again, Abdullah.
Copy that, Tom. Thank you. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I lost connectivity for a few seconds.
If you can reshare your presentation, please.
Yeah, I will. I am busy resharing. And again, I humbly apologize for the loss of connectivity.
There we go. It's back on.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, to start, what is a tie in modern cricket? So a tie is when all 4 innings have been completed and the scores are equal after those 4 completed innings. So so both criteria needs to be met for the match to be a tie. So first, again, to complete the 2 criteria, all 4 innings needs to be completed. Side A needs to have a completed first innings and a completed second innings, and side B needs to have a completed first and second innings. And then second criteria, after there's been 4 completed innings and the scores after you added up the first and second innings are equal, then that particular game is a tie. To use an example just to illustrate this, so I'll just use round numbers, so just for example purposes. So side A went to bat and scored 200 runs. Side B went into bat and scored exactly 200 runs as well in the first innings. Now side A goes into bat again and scores 150 runs, and the innings is completed after losing 10 wickets. Now side B is going to go bat in their second innings, and with about 20 overs left in the game, side B is now 149 for 8. The 9th wicket also falls on 149. So now, remember, the target is 151 to win. The last wicket player scored a single, and now side B is also on 150 for 9. And now the fielding side takes the 10th wicket. So now over both innings have been completed, and the scores are exactly the same if you add up the totals. So in that case, in this particular match, the game is a tie. So a draw. So we've just covered how do you win a game, and we've just covered what a tie is. So all the laws telling us is the result of a match shall be a draw when it is not determined in any of the ways we've just covered. So just to use my previous example again, just to illustrate to you what a draw is. So we've just covered what a tie is. So scores are equal after 4 innings have been completed. So another example. So side A bats and scores 200. Side B go into bat and scores 150. Side A goes into bat again and scores 100 all out. So now if you now add up what side B needs to go chase, so side A scored 200 in their first innings and 100 in the second innings, so that's 300. Side B was dismissed for 150 in their first innings, so side B needs to score 151 in their second innings to win the game. So side B then gets to 145 for the loss of 9 wickets when the final ball in the last hour gets bowled. So there are no more balls to be bowled, and side B is 145 for 9. Remember, the target was 151 to win. So in this case, the result of this particular game is it's a draw because side A didn't take all the 10 wickets of side B, nor did side B score enough runs to win the game. They had to score 151 to win. They only ended up on 145, so they ended up 5 runs short because side A didn't take all the wickets, nor did side B score the runs. This game will then be a draw. So what happens when with a winning hit? So if a boundary is scored before the batter have completed sufficient runs to win the game, the law tells us if that is the case, then the whole of the boundary shall be credited to the side's total, and if it came off the bat, also will go towards the striker's score. I'll use an example to illustrate this point. Side B are chasing 200 to win the match. Side B is 198 for the loss of 3 wickets. So they need 3 more runs to win the game, and they only, let's say they're only 7 wickets down. So 3 more runs to win the game. The batter then drives the ball through the covers and it goes over the boundary. So batter scored 4 runs. So that 4 runs will be credited to the batting side, to their total, and the 4 runs will go towards the batter. Okay. Another example. Side B needs 200 to win the game. They're 199 for 2. So the batter drives the ball through the covers. Just before the batters complete 1 run, the ball goes over the boundary. So they have not completed the single yet. Just before they completed the single, the ball goes over the boundary. So the law tells us that because they haven't completed sufficient runs to win the game, the whole of the boundary shall be credited to the striker and to the batting side. So how do you state the result of the game? So if the side batting last win and they didn't lose all the wickets, the result shall be stated as a win by the number of wickets still to fall. So side A needs to score 200 to win the game. They hit the winning run and they now 201 for 5. So the result of that game will be side B winning by 5 wickets. If the side fielding last wins the game, the result shall then be stated as a win by runs. So side B had to score 200 to win. Side A dismissed them in their second innings for 150. So side A will win the game by 50 runs. Earlier we spoke about if there's a refusal to play or a side conceding defeat, how will that result be stated? The result will then be as match conceded or match awarded, as the case may be. So what happens if there is a mistake in scoring? So after the players and umpires have left the field in play, has left the field of play, and they believe the winning runs were scored, and then once they get to the scorer tells them, oops, there we've made a slight calculation error. Actually, side B needs to score 4 more runs to win the game. So what do you do then? The law tells us that when the players have left the field and the side batting last has not completed its innings and the number of overs to be bowled in the last hour or in that innings has not been completed, or the agreed time for close of play for the end of the innings has not been reached, then unless one side concedes defeat, the umpire shall then take the players back onto the field of play. Play shall then resume. The side batting last will need to score 4 more runs to win the game. So unless a result is reached soon, play will continue if conditions permit until the prescribed number of overs has been completed and either the time of close of play has been reached or the allotted time for the innings has expired. Once the umpires have agreed with the scorers to the correctness of the score at the conclusion of the game, then the result cannot thereafter be changed. You cannot come a day later and say, we've recalculated the scores in the books and we see side A is actually 2 runs or side B is 2 runs short. That result cannot be changed. Once after the game, the umpires agreed with the scorers of the correctness of the score, that result then cannot be changed. And my last law for the evening, the over. The ball shall be bowled from each alternate in overs of 6 balls. I know back in the past there used to be 8 ball overs. Now the law says there are overs will comprise of 6 valid balls. So when does the over start? As soon as the bowler takes his or her first step, that indicates the start of the over. The ball becomes alive as soon as that first step is taken by the bowler. That indicates the start of the over. sometimes if a bowler have no run up, it starts with these bowling actions. So when that back foot lands for the first delivery, that is when the over starts. A ball delivered by the bowler shall not count as one of the valid balls in the over if it is called dead before the striker has an opportunity to play at the ball. Also, it will not be will not count as a valid ball for the over in circumstances where the striker was not ready to deliver the ball, and this you'll see under the dead ball law, and we will get to it on Wednesday. And also, if the striker was distracted while receiving the delivery, that ball will also not count as one of the valid balls of the over. Will also not be a valid ball of the over if it's a no ball or a wide. And it will also not be a valid ball for the over if there's a player returning without permission that touches the ball, and we will get to that law next week. And under law 41, when there's a deliberate attempt to distract the striker before the striker has received the ball, and also there's a deliberate distraction, deception, or obstruction of the batter after the striker has received the ball. In those cases, the ball shall also not count as one for the over. Otherwise, all other balls will be valid balls. So call of over. When 6 valid balls have been bowled and when the ball becomes dead, the umpire needs to call over before leaving the wicket. So the important part of this is, and if you can visualize it, just visualize that you are the bowler's end umpire, and now the 6th ball of the over has been bowled. You need to wait until the ball is dead, and once the ball is dead, the bowler's end umpire needs to call over. So you can only call over once, in your opinion, the ball is dead. Very important. Call over only once the ball is dead. So wait until the ball is dead, then you call over. So what happens if an umpire miscount? See what the law tells us. So if the umpire miscount, the law tells us that the miscounted number of balls in the over shall stand. Meaning, if an umpire calls over after only 5 valid balls was delivered, that over will stand. That's point number A. Point B tells us that if the umpire allows for an over to continue after 6 valid balls have been bowled, the umpire then may subsequently call over as the ball becomes dead after any delivery, even if that delivery is not a valid ball. So an example of point B. So the umpire miscounts and allows for a 7th ball to be bowled. And now the 7th ball gets bowled, and now that 7th ball is a no ball. What do? Now the umpire realized that they made a mistake. They've actually allowed an additional ball, but that 7th ball was actually a no ball. So the law tells us as soon as the umpires realize they made a mistake and they have allowed for an additional ball to be bowled, they can call, or they should call over, even though that 7th ball was not a valid delivery, even though it was a no ball. The law still allows, upon realization that you've allowed a 7th ball in the over, you are allowed, as per the law, to call over even if that 7th ball was not a valid ball. Also, if any run scored from that 7th ball that you've allowed by the striker, any run scored by the striker shall count it will go towards the striker, it will go towards the the batting side score as well. Even if the bowler takes a wicket from the 7th ball that you've allowed in the over, that wicket shall stand. That's why you can see it's very important that you do make sure that you count, you get your over count correct. That's why on the field of play, we do have signals where we confirm how many balls left in the over. Some umpires confirm when there are 3 balls left in the over. Some only do it when there are 2 balls left in the over. There is a sign that the umpires do. They just show, if there are 2 balls left in the over, they just show 2 fingers to his or her colleague, and that's just confirmation of how many balls left in the over. But the important thing is make sure that you get your over count correct. Are a bowler allowed to change ends in an innings? Yeah, the law tells us the bowler may change ends as often as he or she desires. But there's one exception. That bowler is not allowed to bowl 2 overs consecutively. Nor is that bowler allowed to bowl parts of each of 2 consecutive overs in the same innings. So the important thing here is a bowler can change ends as often as possible, no issue. Bowler's just not allowed to bowl from 2 overs consecutively. And if a bowler completes an over of another bowler, let's say a bowler gets injured midway through the over after 3 balls, and my captain asked me to complete the rest of the over, so I've now bowled 3 balls to complete the over, I will not be allowed to bowl the next over. So I've completed the injured bowler's over. Someone else needs to bowl the next over, and then I can come back in to bowl again. I'm not allowed to complete the injured bowler's over and then bowl the very next over. So do you need to finish an over? So the law tells us that other than at the end of an innings, a bowler shall finish an over in progress unless that bowler is injured or the bowler is suspended under any of the laws. And if for any reason, other than at the end of the innings, an over is left uncompleted at the start of the interval, or if there's an interruption, once play resumes, that over needs to be completed. So what happens if a bowler is incapacitated, or a bowler becomes injured or suspended during the over? So if a bowler gets injured while running up to deliver the first ball of the over, the umpire needs to call and signal dead ball. Then what do? That injured or suspended bowler, another bowler needs to then complete that over, provided that that bowler does not bowl 2 overs consecutively. Nor is that bowler now completing the over. Will that bowler now be allowed to bowl the next over? Tom, thank you so much. That is my laws that I'm covering this evening. I'm now handing over to you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. Good evening, candidates. I will go through laws 18 and 19. And Abdullah, there are quite a few videos in these laws. So just let me know if you do not hear the sound on the videos.
Copy that.
First law I'm going through is law 18, which is scoring runs. And as Abdullah alluded to in the result law, effectively the team which scores more runs will win a cricket match. So let's see how the law tells us that runs are scored. A run shall, or the score shall be reckoned by runs, and a run is scored so often as the batters at any time while the ball is in play have crossed and made good their ground from end to end, which is from the one popping crease to the other. Runs are also scored when a boundary is scored, and law 19 is all to do with boundaries. So we'll have a closer look at boundaries in the next law. Runs are also scored when penalty runs are awarded, and all the way through the laws we shall cover how and when penalty runs are awarded to the batting side or even the fielding side. We also have short runs, and if you recall from the first lecture, the signal for short run is touching your shoulder with the accompanying hand. Why and when does a short run happen? Let's see what the law says. A run is short if a batter fails to make good his or her ground in turning for a further run. So you cannot have a short run if only one run is scored. If you are turning for a second run and either of the batters do not make good their ground, they do not have any part of their bat or person grounded beyond the popping crease on the opposite end, when they turn for the second run, then that run will be short. Although a short run shortens the succeeding one, the latter, if completed, shall not be regarded as short. So if a batter turns short at the end of the first run, but completes the second run will count as completed. Also, the likes of David Miller stand outside of their crease when they bat. If a batter hits the ball from outside of his or her crease, he or she does not have to go back into his or her crease to start the run. They can simply take off from where they've hit the ball. So a striker setting off for the first run from in front of the popping crease may do so without penalty. Let us watch a video that talks about the difference between accidental short runs and deliberate short runs, how we apply both according to the law.
Hello guys, welcome to my channel. This video is a new addition to the analysis series. Let's get started. On 15th of November 2018, second day of second test match between Sri Lanka and England, a strange incident happened. Let's watch the footage. Looks like a normal short run case, isn't it? Well, that's not the case. Let's see what umpire's decision was. If you did not understand what he signaled, he initially disallowed all the runs scored by the batsman on that delivery. Further, he informed the batsman about deliberate short running and awarded 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see what the cricket law has to say about running short. There are two categories in this, unintentional and deliberate. Let's take a look at unintentional short running first. If a batsman runs short, then the umpire shall call and signal short run as soon as the ball becomes dead, and that run shall not be scored. For example, if they run 2 and if they run 1 short, then only 1 run will be scored. Now, let's take a look at deliberate short run. Cricket law states that if either umpire considers that one or both the batsmen deliberately ran short, then wait for the ball to become dead and further disallow all the runs scored on that delivery, return the batsmen to their original end, and award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see why the umpire considered this incident as deliberate short running. As you can see, both the batsmen start running and then striker Roshan Silva feels that the ball will reach the boundary. But upon seeing Moeen Ali has stopped the ball, he runs back to the striker's end. But in between, the striker Roshan Silva did not ground the bat at all, which made the umpire to consider this as deliberate short run. If he had at least tried to ground the bat, then most likely that the umpire would not have considered this as a deliberate short run. 5-run penalty for this feels a bit harsh, isn't it? Now let's see why exactly this law exists. In an IPL match between Mumbai Indians and Kings 11, while chasing 231, Mumbai Indians needed 16 runs of the last over. Kieron Pollard, who faces the first ball of the over, strikes the ball and sets off for the run, thinking that he can come back for 2. But upon realizing that he cannot make it, he runs back to the striker's end without completing the first run. And it can be seen that he did that deliberately as he wanted to get back the strike. It is clearly unfair as he got 1 run and also he came back to the strike. To prevent the players from doing such things, this law exists. But in Roshan Silva's case, he was not trying to gain any unfair advantage. But since he did not make any effort to complete the first run, it was ruled deliberate short run. Still have any doubts with this? Do let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, then hit the like button and share with all your friends. If you have not subscribed yet, then don't forget to subscribe for more such contents.
Very clear differentiation there by the Cricket Digest between unintentional short runs and deliberate short runs. Let us just go through the law as described in that video. If either batter runs a run short, the umpire concerned shall call and signal short run when the ball becomes dead, and that run shall not be scored. If after either or both batters run short, a boundary is scored, the umpire concerned shall disregard the short running. If both batters run short in one and the same run, this shall be regarded as only one short run. So let's just picture that in our minds. The striker and the non-striker turning for the first run, both turn short, but both complete the second run. The umpires will, between them, realize that the same run was ran short, so only 1 run must be short and 1 run shall be scored. How do you communicate to the scorers that 1 run is scored? If only 1 run is short, the scorers will have seen that 2 runs were attempted, and the signal of short run means 2 minus 1 is equal to 1 run scored. If they have attempted 3 runs and 2 were short, then you still signal short run as per normal, but you will try and get a message across to the scorers that only 1 run should count because 2 runs were short. However, I think I did mention this in our first lecture. If after the first run is short, whichever umpire at whichever end the run was short, that umpire should call and immediately signal no ball for all the players to hear. Sorry, not no ball, short run. And I can guarantee you that after running the first run short, both batters will make sure that they don't run short for a second time in that same delivery. I've never had it or seen it happen that there is more than one run short in the same delivery. But if it does happen, you just need to confirm with the scorers at the next interval how many runs were scored on that particular ball where there was more than one run short. Let's summarize deliberate short runs and how we should apply it as umpires. If either umpire considers that one or both batters deliberately ran short, the umpire concerned shall, when the ball is dead, call and signal short run and inform the other umpire of what has occurred. Then the bowler's end umpire shall disallow all runs to the batting side by making the dead ball signal. Return any not out batter to his or her original end. Signal no ball or wide if applicable. And award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. We also need to inform the captain of the fielding side, and as soon as practical, the captain of the batting side, why we are awarding 5 penalty runs. This shall be known as the informing procedure throughout the rest of this presentation. The third category of scoring runs we mentioned is penalty runs. When are penalty runs awarded? They are awarded as mentioned for deliberate short runs in Law 18, in Law 24, a player returning without permission and coming into contact with the ball. Law 26, illegal practice on the field. Law 21 is no ball. Law 22 is wide. Law 28 is the fielder, and 28.2 deals with illegal fielding. Also 5 penalty runs awarded for illegal fielding, and we will get to these details in these lectures, so I'm not going to expand on them now. Law 28.3 is the protective helmet behind the wicket keeper, which has been placed there by the fielding side. If the ball hits that, then it automatically becomes dead, and 5 penalty runs will be awarded to the batting side. And in Law 41 and 42, there are various offences that are punishable by 5 penalty runs. We shall, as I mentioned, get into Law 19 soon, where we will speak about the boundaries, boundary 4 and boundary 6. And then when a batter is dismissed, are runs scored or not? Let's see what the law says. When a batter is dismissed, any runs for penalties awarded to either side shall stand. No other runs shall be credited to the batting side except as follows. If a batter is dismissed obstructing the field, the batting side shall also score any runs completed before the offence. If, however, the obstruction prevented a catch from being taken, no runs other than penalties shall be scored. If a batter is dismissed run out, the batting side shall also score any runs completed before the wicket was put down. So if a batter is run out attempting to complete a third run, then the 2 runs that were completed before the run out was executed will be added to the batting side's score. If, however, a striker who has a runner is dismissed, any runs completed by the runner and the other batter shall be disallowed. You might be surprised that we mention runners in this day and age where you don't see runners in international cricket and most domestic cricket. However, the laws still provide for runners in Law 25 because especially at masters level cricket, so over 40s or over 50s, there are still runners allowed in some competition. In Western Province Cricket Association, the matches that we umpire, Premier Division men's, as well as First Division 1A to D, there are no runners allowed. However, in the Third Division, there are runners allowed, but we do not umpire in that division. Who gets the runs and when are they awarded to batters and not awarded to batters? Let's see what the law says. Unless stated otherwise, if the ball is struck by the bat, all runs scored by the batting side shall be credited to the striker, except an award of 5 penalty runs, which shall be scored as penalty runs. 1 run penalty for no ball, which shall be scored as no ball extras. And if the ball is not struck by the bat, runs shall be scored as penalty runs, byes, leg byes, no ball extras, or wides, whichever the case may be. If byes or leg byes accrue from a no ball, only the 1 run penalty for the no ball shall be scored as no ball extras, and the remainder will be scored as byes or leg byes, whichever the case might be. Which runs go against the bowler's figures? We all know that bowlers always want to protect their bowling figures. All runs scored by the striker go against the bowler. All runs scored as no ball extras go against the bowler. All runs scored as wides go against the bowler. And now we have a slight change to the law. When the striker is dismissed in any of the modes of dismissal listed below, the not out batter shall return to his or her original end. Bold is old news. So if the striker is bowled, the non-striker remains on the non-striking end. Stumped as well, if the striker is stumped, the non-striker will remain in the non-striker's end. Hit the ball twice, leg before wicket, hit wicket, and now we have the new law coming into play. If a striker is out caught, quite often what happens when a striker hits the ball up in the air, he or she starts to run, and previously if the striker and non-striker were to cross before the catch was taken, then the non-striker would be facing the next delivery if the over is not yet complete. This change in the law says that the non-striker, whether they have crossed or not, if the striker is out caught, then the non-striker will return to his or her end, and the incoming batter will be on strike if, of course, there are still balls left in the over.
But you can wash in the morning.
Allahudien Palekar, is that you in the background joining us? We shall engage with you a little bit later while we get through the laws. If as well a striker is out obstructing the field and where the obstruction prevents a catch from being taken, even if the non-striker and the striker have crossed before that obstruction took place, the non-striker will return to his or her original end And so the incoming batter will be on strike for the next delivery if it's still in the same over. So that is all about runs. And now we're going into details on boundaries. This will be the last law presented before we get into our discussion with Allahudien Palekar. How do we determine the boundary of the field of play? Before the toss, the umpire shall determine the boundary of the field of play, which shall be fixed for the duration of the match. So you cannot, for the first innings, have boundaries which are 60 meters long, and then there is a huge shower of rain, and the last 5 meters of the field are wet, and then you decide, let us bring the boundaries in by 6 meters so that the wet patches are out of play. The law disallows that. It's clear that they shall be fixed for the duration of the match, so they are the same for all teams batting, both teams batting on all days play. The boundary shall be determined that no part of any side screen will be within the field of play. The side screen can be part of the boundary, but definitely not inside the boundary. How do we identify and mark the boundary? Where practical, the boundary shall be marked by means of a continuous white line or an object in contact with the ground. Here we have a text in green, which means that this particular point is examined in the level 1 online test. If the boundary is marked by a white line, the edge of the line nearest the pitch shall be the boundary. So you will often see on television when a ball is hit up in the air and the ball lands on the boundary rope or the cushion that is used to mark the boundary, that is a boundary 6 because the ball has passed the inside edge of that line or that marker, and that, as the law is telling us, is a boundary 6 because it is effectively outside of the boundary. An object such as a flag, post, or board used merely to highlight the position of a line marked on the ground must be placed beyond the boundary and is not itself to be regarded as being the boundary. We shall see a picture demonstrating this point. So there, as mentioned, the inside edge of the white line that marks the boundary is the boundary. You can have a fence, as they used to do in the early 90s, up until the early 90s in Australia, where players often slid into picket fences, and those injuries caused for them to come up with boundary ropes. Boundary ropes, similar to the line, the inside edge thereof is the boundary. And if you have poles, posts, or flags, then there must be outside the line, but the boundary is still the inside edge of the line. The posts and the flags are merely indicators as to where the boundary is. Okay. If the boundary is marked by means of an object that is in contact with the ground, the boundary will be the edge of the grounded part of the object, which is nearest the pitch. So the boundary cushions are a perfect example of that. The inside edge of that cushion is where the boundary starts. Where there is no white line or object providing continuous marking, objects such as flags, posts, or boards may be used to mark specific points on the boundary. The boundary shall be the imaginary straight line on the ground joining the two nearest marked points. We do have in some poorer clubs in Cape Town where quite often, unfortunately, we have the problem of theft of boundary ropes. The clubs then put out bricks, which are not very safe, but nobody steals bricks. So there's maybe a 5-meter distance between each brick. So the fielders and the umpires need to imagine a straight line from one brick to the next as the boundary line. And we do have to rely on the honesty of the fielders as to whether a ball has crossed that imaginary boundary line or not when they are fielding, because we are 50 to 70 meters away from the boundary. So it's difficult for us as umpires to make a decision on whether the ball or the fielder has crossed the boundary with the ball in the fielder's hand. A boundary that cannot be identified shall be determined by the umpires before the toss. So where you don't have a rope, you don't have a marked line, you don't have bricks, you need to make a plan and put something to be able to demarcate a boundary. An obstacle within the field of play shall not be regarded as a boundary unless so determined by the umpires before the toss. We mentioned in the first lecture that if you arrive at a ground and there is a tree in the middle of the field, or a rugby poles or soccer posts, then you need to find out what is the custom surrounding that particular object in the field when the ball hits it on the full or along the ground. And we have an example of this from Pietermaritzburg Oval. 2 Saturdays ago, I officiated in Cricket South Africa's Division 2 T20 competition. SA Under-19 were playing against the home side KwaZulu-Natal Inland Tuskers, and we shall see the video of a boundary being hit towards the tree, which is 3/4 inside the field of play. A person or animal coming onto the field of play while the ball is in play shall not be regarded as a boundary unless the umpires determine otherwise at the time that contact between the ball and such a person or animal is made, and the decision shall be made for each separate occurrence. So if there's a dog that runs onto the field, the ball is hit towards the boundary and it hits the dog and then does not go over the boundary, you as the bowlers and umpire need to decide whether or not you feel that ball, if it wasn't for the dog intercepting it, would have gone to the boundary or not. If you feel that it would have gone to the boundary, then you signal boundary 4. If you feel that it would not have gone to the boundary, then you tell the players, play on. The batters keep running and the fielders must go and field the ball. So let's have a look at this video from 2 Saturdays ago. And please bear with me while I find the correct timing on the YouTube video.
That was brilliantly timed. There we go, that's gone, Miles. Oh. But it might only be 4 if it touches the tree. That's the biggest 4 you'll ever see. Christo?
Ahmed, cut the trees down here.
That's a 100-meter 4. Cut the trees down, brother. The best part is when the analysts do the projection like they do in golf. It will be showing a carry of 110 meters, but it's only 4 runs. The biggest.
So you couldn't really see the ball there, but it was flying quite far over the boundary. However, it hit a branch on the top of the tree, and according to the custom at Pietermaritzburg Oval, if the ball hits any part of the tree, whether on the full or along the ground, after a bounce or rolling, then the boundary will be boundary 4, because if you have a look, the tree is slightly inside the field of play. Okay, so that is the custom at Pietermaritzburg Oval, and that, unfortunately, as the commentators say, is the biggest 4 that Matthew Boast will ever hit in his life. Right, going back to the presentation. How many runs are scored from boundaries? We all know that we score a boundary 6 or a boundary 4. Let us look at the definitions thereof. A boundary 6 will be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat and is first grounded beyond the boundary without having been in contact with the ground. This shall apply even if the ball has previously touched a fielder. A boundary 4 will be scored when a ball that is grounded beyond the boundary, whether struck by the bat or not, was first grounded within the boundary or has not been struck by the bat. So, quite important in the definition of a boundary 6 is that the ball has been struck by the bat. So I'm going to give you a scenario. I want you to close your eyes and picture this. A fast bowler bowls a short pitch delivery to a striker. The striker attempts a hook shot, but misses the ball with his bat. The ball ricochets off the top of the striker's helmet and flies over the boundary without touching the ground and lands in the stands. Okay, so the ball is a short pitched fast delivery. Batter tries to play a pull shot or a hook shot, misses the ball with his bat. The ball goes on to hit the top of the helmet and flies over the boundary without a bounce and lands in the spectators' seats. So my question to you, and I would like you all to type in your answer in the chat box, is that a boundary 4 or is that a boundary 6? And how would you signal it to the scorers? Is that a boundary 4 or is it a boundary 6? And how would you signal it to the scorers? Please all type your answers in the chat box and we will discuss it after the presentation and after our chat with Allahudien Palekar. When a boundary is scored, the batting side shall be awarded whichever is the greater of the allowance for the boundary or the runs completed by the batters together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant that the boundary is scored. So it's very unlikely, but imagine a striker hits the ball and the ball trickles towards the boundary and they are able to run 5 runs and complete 5 runs before the ball crosses the boundary. Then what the law is telling us here is that 5 runs would be added to the total of the batting side and not the boundary 4. Okay, but I've never seen that happen. I don't think there is a fielding team slow enough to allow 5 runs to be ran and the ball still goes over the boundary rope. The scoring of penalty runs by either side is not affected by the scoring of a boundary. Okay, let's look at boundary catches. What is out and what is 6? Not always easy. Something interesting for the TV umpire fans.
Boundary catching. In cricket, a catch is considered to be fair if the fielder is within the field of play and the ball hasn't touched the ground before he or she catches it. The fielder must have complete control both over the ball and his or her own movement. Can a batsman be caught over the boundary? Well, this being cricket, the answer is yes and no. If the fielder catches the ball like this, with part of the body grounded outside the field of play, then the lucky old batsman is not only not out, but also scores a 6. However, if in the same situation the fielder has leapt for the ball from within the boundary, but not from outside it, caught it whilst airborne over the boundary, but managed to throw it up in the air before touching the ground, he or she can then step back into the field of play to complete the catch. It doesn't matter if the fielder throws it to a teammate or completes the catch on his or her own. In this scenario, the same batsman who just scored 6 would in fact have been out. As they frequently say, it's a funny old game. For Oodle's more details on this subject, take a look at Laws 19 and 33 in MCC's The Laws of Cricket.
That's a nice animation video. Let's have a look at some actual fielding on the boundary for more detail on this topic.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Digest channel. In this video, let's take a look at recent boundary catching controversy of Matt Renshaw in a Big Bash T20 match. Matt Renshaw catches the ball well inside the boundary line, but he throws the ball in the air as he was about to cross the boundary line. Further, he goes outside the boundary line, jumps in the air and pushes the ball inside the boundary where another fielder completes the catch. This action was deemed legal and the batsman was given out. But a lot of people were of the opinion that it should be given 6. Let's see what exactly the cricket law has to say about this. According to Cricket Law 19, if a fielder takes the catch while going outside the boundary line, the following conditions must be met for the catch to be valid. A fielder's last contact with the ground must be inside the boundary line before touching the ball for the first time. Note that subsequent contact with the ball do not have this restriction. If condition 1 has been met, then the fielder is allowed to touch the ball airborne, jumping from outside the boundary line. If the catch has been taken airborne, then the fielder must land inside the boundary line. If 2 fielders are involved in the process, then these conditions apply for both of them. In Matt Renshaw's case, we can see that he was well within the boundary line before he made contact with the ball for the first time. He subsequently makes contact with the ball airborne, jumping from outside the boundary line. Note that it is allowed as he made first contact with the ball inside the boundary line. Further, catch has been completed by another fielder who is entirely inside the boundary line. Hence, none of the conditions for boundary catching were violated and the catch was deemed legal. One can recall that the Sri Lankan player Angelo Matthews did the stunt for the first time in international cricket back in 2009. After this incident, law was simplified to get more clarity on such boundary catching cases. Still have any doubts? Do let me know in the comment section. Until next video, goodbye.
How do we handle overthrows or willful acts of fielders? Let's see what the law says. If the boundary results from an overthrow or from the willful act of a fielder, the runs shall be scored as such. Any runs for penalties awarded to either side, those will always stand, and then the allowance for the boundary will stand. The runs completed by the batters, together with the run in progress, if they had already crossed at the instant of the throw. And we shall see this in action in the next video, which is from the 2019 50 over World Cup final, which was a great talking point after the match.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Digest channel. World Cup final match saw one of the most thrilling finish ever witnessed in an ODI match. However, an overthrow in the 50th over of England innings has sparked the debate. A throw from Martin Guptill deflected after hitting Ben Stokes, who was diving to save his wicket, and the ball crossed the boundary line. Many people were confused about how an overthrow is valid after the ball touches the batsman. Point to be considered here is, everyone in the field, including the batsman and the umpires, are considered as part of the play, and the fielding side has to take this into consideration. Hence, the ball getting deflected from either a batsman or an umpire will not be called a dead ball. However, if a batsman makes deliberate contact with the ball, or if he deliberately comes in the way of a throw, then the ball will be immediately called dead and the batsman will be given out, obstructing the field. But in the case of Ben Stokes, he had come in the way of throw, but he did not do it deliberately. He was running hard to save his wicket and he did not make deliberate contact with the ball either. It looks unfair to the fielding side in this case, but one should also take into consideration that catching after the ball hits either an umpire or a batsman is valid. Hence, allowing overthrow was well within the laws of the game. But there was a mistake committed by the umpires in this incident. They awarded 6 runs, whereas only 5 runs should have been awarded. According to Cricket Law 19.8, if the boundary results from an overthrow or from the willful act of a fielder, then the runs scored shall be allowance for the boundary, which is 4 runs in this case, and the runs completed by the batsman plus the run in progress if the batsman had already crossed at the instant of the throw. Ben Stokes and Adil Rashid had completed the first run, but they had not crossed for the second run at the instant of the throw. Hence, only 1 run should have been awarded for running, and in total, 5 runs should have been awarded. Law further states that if the batsman had not crossed at the instant of the throw, then they should be sent to the end they have left. Meaning, in this case, Adil Rashid should have been sent to the striker's end and Ben Stokes should have been sent to the non-striking end for next delivery. If this law was applied properly, then the New Zealand team would have had a good chance to win the World Cup. Do you feel any different? Do let us know in the comment section. Hello and welcome.
So whenever there is an overthrow, very important for you as on-field umpires to come together and consult as to the instant of the throw. Had the batters crossed? If they had, then that crossing counts as a run plus the boundary allowance for the ball going over the rope after the throw. You do not need to take into consideration how many runs are completed or attempted after the throw has been made, because they can carry on running, but only the runs completed, and if the run in progress had been crossed at the instant of the throw, will that count towards the total number of runs scored for that particular ball. So that is my presentation for this evening. A lot to take in. I hope you have all understood, and I hope the videos have helped to make things clearer in our minds. So now we move on to a little Q&A with Allahudien Palekar. He's affectionately known to his colleagues as Palis, so I shall be referring to him as Palis for this evening. Palis, good evening. Hope you're well. Thank you for joining us. I would like you to take us through your development as an umpire. When did you start? What got you into umpiring? And on this slide, I've got a career sort of pathway that umpires follow to get to the highest level of test match cricket, where you debuted, I think it was December 2021, South Africa against India, at the Wanderers, if I'm not mistaken. So how long did it take you from starting to umpire to get to international cricket firstly, and then after your many T20 and one-day internationals, how long did it then take you to get to on-field test match debut? You are free to speak for as long as you wish or as short as you wish, and then we will take, I think, 5 questions from the floor directed specifically at you, and then we shall go into the questions on the chat box, and then we will take any questions on the presentation as well after that. So Palis, thanks for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be joining this platform. Not so long ago, I was on the other side of the fence and also partaking in these lectures. So, you know, everybody's got to start somewhere. So just a bit of history about myself. I'm born and bred in Cape Town. I played club cricket and first-class cricket for Western Province. And then got a contract to play first-class cricket at the Titans in Pretoria. So moved up to Pretoria in 1999. And in 2006, my contract came to an end, and I thought, well, let me try and stay involved and take up umpiring. It was the logical decision to make, as I come from a family of umpires. My dad is an umpire, and he's currently still umpiring in Cape Town. One of his brothers is umpiring, and 2 of my younger cousins have also started umpiring about 4 or 5 years ago. And interestingly enough, I've just looked at the members on this platform, and I see my dad's younger brother is also on this platform and trying to follow in his nephews and brother's footsteps. So yeah, I come from a family of umpires, so it was always just a natural thing to do once I stopped playing. I stopped playing at a very young age, at the age of 28, and started umpiring in 2006. As you see, this umpiring career timeline that Tom's put on the presentation, because I've played first-class cricket, you kind of get fast-tracked. So I started at the USA Week. So the very first tournament that I attended was the USA Week, which at that stage was the second highest tournament. So I did not have to go to boys under 13 or boys under 15. Yeah, I didn't even attend Coke Week, which is one of the most prestigious tournaments in South Africa to attend as an umpire. So I started at the Universities Week. I did 2 Universities Weeks and 2 Club Champs Weeks, and then got promoted to the pilot panel in 2009. So basically that was 3 years of umpiring at club level and tournaments, and, you know, just trying to get some experience under my belt. In 2010, I got promoted to the reserve umpiring panel. And in 2013, I got promoted to the Cricket South Africa first class umpiring panel, which is the highest panel in South Africa. And then in 2017, I got promoted to the ICC International Panel, which I'm currently still serving on. So if you just look at the timeline from 2006 to 2022, it's a total of 16 years that it took me to get to do a test match. And just a correction, Tom, my test match was indeed India versus South Africa. It was supposed to be January 2022, but because of COVID and a whole lot of rescheduling and India coming a bit later, everything got moved. It ended up being the New Year's test at the Wanderers. So that was being a newborn baby. That was a lovely birthday present, doing my debut a day after my birthday. So yeah, so it's quite a long process. You know, you got to be patient. You got to build that experience. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. Even though I was fast tracked and started at, you know, the USA weeks and Cubs week, it still took a few years for me to get to the first class panel. So you know, you just got to wait for opportunities and, you know, hang in there. Sometimes there's a lot of disappointment when it comes to appointments and things like that. But those are things that you cannot control. So you just got to be ready when the opportunity presents itself. Yeah, so I'm not going to talk too much about myself. I think let's get over to the members on this platform and see what questions they have. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Palis. Very insightful. And again, I think I need to stress that every umpire's journey is different. Some take longer, some take shorter, and but you are the master of your own destiny. I would like to ask if there are no other questions for you, Palis. You've been around the world a few times now for various international matches and tournaments. How do you prepare yourself for foreign conditions? For example, I know you were in the UAE for a World Cup qualifying tournament where it's very hot and the pitches are turning pitches more than what we have in South Africa. So are you able to simulate those conditions somehow before you leave for the UAE? How do you prepare for such foreign conditions?
We're quite fortunate that when you do these international tours, the minimum time before you do your first match is 3 days. So there is time for some sort of acclimatization in terms of weather, pitch conditions and things like that. I was quite fortunate before those tournaments. In Cricket South Africa, we have an exchange program with New Zealand, Australia and India. New Zealand and Australia are pretty much similar conditions to South Africa. But when you get to India, it's a very, very different experience. In first class cricket, teams don't play fast bowlers. For example, I had a game in Chennai, which is you know, a rank turning pitch. The home team played no seamers, and it's a mental adjustment because now you're not the first ball of the match is spin. There's no seamers. You've got 4 guys around the bat. You need to now pay attention and concentrate because there's 2 noises all the time. Is it pad, bat, bat, pad? Guys are shouting at you all the time, and being a foreigner in India, they always, or not even India, in any country for that matter, they're always going to test you with a few appeals and, you know, just to see where you are and try and rattle you and, you know, see if you can make some incorrect decisions because you're under pressure. So my preparation is very much the same. Only when you get to these different venues, you got to look at weather, pitch conditions, acclimatizing. Fortunately, heat, I prefer to umpire heat instead of cold. When I went to New Zealand, it was about 3 degrees and the wind blew from the south. So that was a very, very cold experience. If I can just take you back, recently I went to Finland to umpire in the ICC Euro T20 qualifiers about 3 months ago. Yeah. In Europe, none of the countries have turf pitches, so that was a new experience for me. All matches were played on artificial AstroTurf pitches. I think the last time I played on an AstroTurf pitch, I was probably about 12 years old. So that was a new experience for me umpiring there. You worried about the bounce and does it spin and play. So that took a couple of overs just to get into the swing of things, and being in our off season, so I didn't really have any, much match practice. Fortunately, the games were every day, so it was like 2 days on, rest day, 2 days on, rest day, and sometimes you were doing a double header. So you had enough game time to get into it. So yeah, preparation. For me, food is a big problem. Being a Muslim, when you travel to these countries, halal food is not readily available like it is in South Africa. So part of preparation is making sure I take enough stacks, or I take enough food things to keep me going. If you're doing 90 overs in a day and you haven't had a proper meal, it can be taxing on the body. So the one thing I look at in terms of preparation is the food. It's dressing. You look at weather. For example, Finland was their peak summer. We had 2 or 3 days where it was 24 and 25 degrees, but the rest of the days it didn't get above 18 degrees. So that's their peak summer. They're wearing shorts, t-shirts, and yeah, I'm standing in 15 degrees wearing jackets and feeling cold. And we're coming from our winter where it was like 22, 23 degrees, which was warmer than that. So that was a preparation. I'm umpiring with a t-shirt inside and, trying to stay warm. Whereas my colleagues are saying, because I had a few, in fact, all my colleagues were from Europe, different parts of Europe, and they said, this is glorious weather. So yeah, that preparation is part of it. If we can attend nets, we did have one day where we could attend nets. But again, the teams that play there, you don't know much about them. So, it was a learning experience for me as well to go to a foreign country, umpiring guys I've never seen before, because normally at international level or at domestic level, we either watch them play other games, you get some sort of idea of who does what. We speak to our colleagues, preparation in terms of, is this guy's back foot close to the return crease? Is it tight on the front foot? Does he swing the ball in or out? Or what's his stock delivery? Is he a leg spinner? Does he have a googly? Or what's the pace that he bowls? So we do share that type of information. So this was like completely new for me. And even the colleagues, I've never met any of my colleagues before. So that was something new. Yeah, so, various games, you prepare similarly to what you do on field, but it's the external things that you'll do slightly different. For example, if I have to umpire with you, Abdullah, I know what to expect from you. There's not even much to chat about. We'll get to a game, we'll do the game, and that's it. Whereas there, you now need to ask this guy. There's something in Europe where they signal 3 balls left, 2 balls left, 1 ball left, Whereas here in South Africa, we only signal 2 left. So it's small things like that you now need to adjust and speak to your colleague and see how you're going to manage that on field. Over.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, Palis, and wish you all the best for the rest of your blossoming career. We hope to see more of you on test matches, and we will be following your progress keenly. Question has just come in on the chat box for you, Palis, from Declan. What was the toughest decision you have had to make within a match, and what was your decision-making process?
There's no easy decisions, so they're all tough. Sometimes there's an LBW and you give it out and the commentators say, oh, that was an easy decision. Let me tell you, there is no easy decision. If I just go back to my test match debut against India, where the first session of the first day I was tested, where I had about 4 or 5 confident appeals. I think 1 or 2 of them were challenged and I got both of them right. And, I was quite confident. And early on day 2, I had an appeal on Carl Verreynne. I heard 2 noises and I gave it not out. And I looked at my colleague and he showed like bat. He thought he heard 2 noises. I said, yeah, I also thought that. And KL Rahul wanted to review the decision. He spoke to Ashwin, who was at slip, because he had he was quite close by and he's one of the senior players. And he said there was 2 noises, but it was 2 pads. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't think there was 2 pads. Anyway, so they go ahead and review the decision. And I asked the batsman, which was Kyle Verreynne at the time, and I said, Kyle, did you hit that? He said, no, I didn't hit that. And I thought to myself, oh, shucks, that means I've got this wrong, because the batsman himself said he didn't hit it, and there was 2 noises, and the fielding team thinks it's 2 pads. So in international cricket, when there's a DRS decision, it comes up onto the big screen, and you can actually see. So part of your pre-match routines is, you know, I need to show the same body language. I need to have the same facial expressions when I overturn a decision. So we look at the screen, we see what's coming, we know what to do, we prepare ourselves. I need to overturn my decision or stay with my decision. So it comes up onto the big screen, and I'm looking at this, and I don't see any bat there, and I see the ball hit the front pad and then the back pad. I'm thinking, oh shucks, this is wrong. And then they go to Ultra Edge, and Ultra Edge shows the thinnest of edges before touching the front pad and then the back pad. So the TV umpire came back to me and said, you can stay with your original decision of not out. And for me, that was a satisfying decision, because it was a tough decision. The fielding teams were confident. The batting side, he thought he didn't hit it. And it just shows sometimes, you know, in matches when you give a guy out and they say, I've hit it, sometimes they don't even know if they've hit the ball or not. You know, so don't always listen to what they say. You go with your gut, and your colleague can, sometimes he also may not help you, because he can hear noises, but he's not sure what it is. And what was pleasing was, at the end of that over, KL Rahul walked up to me and said to me, excellent decision, you're having a good game. And this is the second morning of my first test match. So that was quite pleasing for me, and it just set, you know, I set myself a high standard, and I was able to maintain it throughout the match. Over.
Excellent, Palis. Well done. I remember watching that, and I was super happy for you. Karthik has got a question. It's day 1 of a 5-day test match, and at lunchtime, you've made 2 wrong decisions, and they've already impacted the game. The fielding side is unhappy with you. How do you bounce back from that to make sure that you perform for the next 4.5 days?
It's always easier said than done to say park that decision, but you know, you have these external factors. They have the screens that they show you all the time. You know, we don't listen to the commentators, but every time your face appears on the big screen, you know something, especially when you've made an error, something negative is being said. And I've done 2 test matches, and I've experienced both the highs and lows, if you want to call it lows. In my second test against Bangladesh, I got an LBW wrong in the 3rd over of the match. So basically the 2nd over from my side. So the 1st over from my side went through, 2nd over from my colleague's side, and the 3rd over, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd ball, I had an LBW appeal, which looked high. It hit on the back leg, on the inner thigh, and I thought, it's the first morning of a test match, fresh pitch, new ball, back leg bounce, we'll probably take it over. At worst case, going to be umpire score. So I gave it not out. Looked at my colleague, and he said, yeah, maybe high. Bangladesh got together thinking, must we review, mustn't we review? And they didn't review that decision, because they also thought it was high. And at the end of that over, they showed it on the big screen, and it showed 3 reds. So what actually happened was, the ball clipped the front pad and then went up. But because guys are bowling at 140 plus, you don't see it when it clips that front. It just brushed that front pad, and that caused the deviation to go up. Whereas ball tracking takes impact at the, or takes the line and the direction and the height of the ball at the first impact. So as soon as it brushed that front pad, ball tracking just stopped there. It doesn't take the height into account, and then it projects it from there. So it showed hitting just the top of leg stump. So not a bad decision, because they didn't even review. But what happened in the first test, where the umpires had a difficult test match in tough conditions in Durban, where the spinners took all 10 wickets in the second innings, and there was turn, there was bounce, there was invariable from the seamers, some kept low. So it was tough conditions. And this now coming to the second test, and in the second over from your side, you make an error, and automatically you're under pressure for the rest of the game. I just told myself, listen, forget about that. Learn from that decision now. We are playing at the coast, which is St. George's, which is not known for a lot of bounce. And at the end of that test match, I gave a further 7 LBWs that I gave out and were all out. And I had another 2 incorrect during the rest of the match. So I basically had 7 out of 10 correct for LBWs. So it wasn't a bad game, but considering on day one, had an error early on, and I had to tell myself, keep on saying, forget about that decision, think about the next ball. And I gave 7, which were all correct. And it was actually funny that all my errors were not outs that were out, and all my out decisions were correct. So, like it's easier said, but you try and learn from your errors. So if you have an error early on, try and think, okay, if this happens again, what can I learn from that decision? Maybe at club level, it's not so easy because there's no replays, there's no instant feedback. Like we know exactly, even if they don't show it on the screen, we normally speak to the TV umpire and says, did that pitch outside leg? And then he gets the replay and he said, yes, it pitched outside leg. So now you more or less know your lines and where to look, and and that builds confidence as well. So the advice I can give is, if you've made a decision and you know you've made an error, try and forget about it, learn from it, because the next ball is more important than the ball that's just passed. Over.
Perfect. Great advice there, Palis. That last sentence, really very important for new and experienced umpires to always remember. Norbert from Uganda asks, how important is it to build rapport with the players, batters and fielders during the game? And how much is enough, or rather adequate, to have the game run in the spirit of the game?
Yeah, that is something that takes a bit of time, where you earn the respect of the players. It's not something that's going to happen in the first game, or it's going to happen overnight, or, if I just go back to my test debut. On day one, these guys, South Africa fielded first, and they know me from domestic cricket. And they tried their luck. They appealed for everything. They reviewed 2 or 3 decisions, and, and then day 2, India tried that. And by lunchtime on day 2, both teams knew what they were dealing with, and after that, the reviews became less. They only reviewed the genuine ones that they thought were worth reviewing. But those frivolous and half appeals, they just stopped reviewing that, because now they gained the respect of the umpire. But that takes time, because you need to have an understanding with the player. They must understand how you operate. You need to know where to draw the line, because at the end of the day, they're not your friends. Because when you need to give him out LBW, you need to give him out. So what happens on the field, even though you can be friends off the field, but on the field, you need to make those decisions. And that's the way you gain respect from the players. At first class level and higher, we do attend nets where players practice, and that's where you build some rapport and relationship with the players. Tom, maybe if you want to share your experience about what happened in Kimberley last year when you no-balled this guy, what's his name? The Northern Cape guy in the nets, and he took off with you, and then in the match, he had a few no-balls. Maybe you can just relate that story afterwards. So that takes a bit of time, but the less said about the umpires on the day, you've done a great job. You're just there to control the match, make sure it runs smoothly. At the end of the day, the players are there to play the game, and you're just there to manage it. Over.
Perfect. Thanks, Palis. You're quite right. Rapport is important, but you need to keep your position as an umpire and their position as players, and not become too friendly with them, because it might be seen as favoritism if you are sharing jokes at square leg with a certain fielder, but not with the other team. So my incident with Johan van Dijk of Northern Cape at net practice last year before Cricket South Africa T20 tournament, the fast bowler overstepped quite far on a delivery. So my instinctive reaction was to shout no ball. And of course, in nets, you do not have to shout loud. And in fact, Murray Rasmus was with us in that particular tournament, and he suggested that have a quiet word with the bowler when he comes back after the delivery and tell him how far over he was. There's no need to call and signal no ball at a net practice, because maybe the nets are so short that the run-ups are not even correct for the bowlers. So they're not too worried about where their front foot is landing. They're just worried about their rhythm and how the ball is coming out of the hand. So I learned something new that day, not to shout no ball in net practices. And thankfully, his reaction at the time was quite poor. He swore at me and said I shouldn't call no balls. But then later that evening, when we were having supper, he came over to me, to our table, and apologized. And we actually get on very well since that particular episode. Funnily enough, in the game, he did bowl no balls, and we had a laugh about it. And we just said, yeah, maybe just remember what you practice in the nets is usually what happens on the field of play as well. We've got a comment or a question from a former first-class umpire in South Africa, a colleague, an ex-colleague of ours, Jeff Voluter. He says, "Hi, Pallies, great to see or hear you again. You and I had a very unique situation in a televised Africa T20 Cup match in Bloemfontein, when putters was sneakily run out at your end, but there was no appeal. Do you mind sharing that? Let me know if you don't remember, and maybe Jeff can share that run out or non-run out. Pallies, do you remember that incident?
Not really. How's it, Jeff? No, I don't. Maybe you can just share that with us. I've had so many decisions since then. I've lost track.
Jeff, do you want to unmute your microphone and share that incident with us?
Good evening, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Good evening to all. Hi, Pallies. Great to be speaking with you again. Just to get to the story, it was I believe it was Kenya. They played Province played Kenya, and you were at the bowler's end. And then I can't remember who the striker was, but he just hit the ball to one of the close fielders. They picked it up. There was a bit of a scurry, a yes, no from the batsman. Eventually, they decided against the run, but then the fielder actually like a hawk went down on the ball, and he went at the stumps, hit the stumps, middle stump, and there was absolutely no appeal. There was no appeal. You and I had a quick glance at each other, but there was no appeal from the fielders. And then Bongani Jeli was the TV umpire, and he came over the radios. And he said to you, Pallies, are you sure you don't want to refer that? Maybe you should refer that. Because when they looked on the slow motion, they saw that he was actually short by about 4 or 5 centimeters. But there was not a single one of the fielders who made an effort to appeal. There was no appeal. And as we know, umpire cannot give a batsman out without an appeal. So it was just, and your response to Bongani was simply, to the TV umpire, Bongani, was simply, I can't refer it because there was no appeal. There was no appeal. And then we just had you informed putters that he escaped one, and there was just a chuckle, and the game went on. That's about it. Over, guys.
Great stuff. Thanks for sharing, Jeff.
I remember that now. I remember it. Yeah. I don't know if guys have been following an incident that happened yesterday between Australia and England, the obstructing the field with Matthew Wade.
Yeah, I saw that.
So again, similarly there, if you look at the evidence, that for me is out obstructing the field. But again, there was no appeal from the fielding side. the umpires actually went to the captain and said, "Are you appealing for this?" And he said no. So again, just a lesson for us: we cannot make decisions if there's no appeals. Over.
Excellent. Thanks, Pallies. We will cover that in Law 31, which is appeals. But great for you guys to share actual experiences for the candidates to know how and when to apply the law. Abdullah, I know you've got a question for Pallies. I think that will be the last one for him this evening before we go through the other questions on the chat box. Go ahead, Abdullah.
Thank you, Tom. Assalamu alaikum, Pallies.
Alaikum
Earlier
salam.
you spoke about your preparation. So my question is your preparation at the various levels that you stand, Pallies. So how do you prepare for a test match, and then the next week let's say you do a provincial 4-day game, and maybe the next week you're doing a club game in your local province. Is there a difference in your preparation? And then secondly, what are the differences between the various levels that you stand, Pallies? So test match, provincial level, is there a difference between the cricket? And if yes, what are they? Over.
Thanks, Abdullah, for that question. Yeah, when it comes to preparation, obviously in the different levels, the intensity of cricket is different. If I go back to a couple of years ago, I did my ODI debut in PE. It was Pakistan, South Africa. It was a Friday night game, and I was involved in the first ODI only, and that was the Friday. So did the game and flew back home Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember which day. And the very next Saturday, I did a school game. And one of the learners, this is now under 19 boys, and one of the learners actually recognized me and says, "Sir, didn't you do this game last week between South Africa and Pakistan?" I said, "Yes, I did." And he told me, "So what are you doing here? This is just a normal school game." So I told him, at the end of the day, this is cricket. I'm an umpire, and I umpire any game, doesn't matter which level it is. So when you get to the schoolboy level, your preparation is slightly different, because a lot of the time it's an educational process, because they're not too familiar with the laws of the game. So now you got to get yourself down to that level and try and not penalize them for everything, the first time. Maybe explain to them if a bowler runs on the protected area, or the batsman running on the pitch, or whatever it is, and just try and educate them. So when you come down to that level, you obviously you got to bring your level down. When you get to test match level, you'd expect the players to know the laws, but they also don't know it at that level, or at least not all of them. So my preparation is similar. I do the same routines. I pack my bag exactly the same way. When I get to the field, I do the same things. I go and take my mark. I go and look at if there's any overhanging trees. I go and stand at square leg and check if I can see the line. Look at bouncers, especially if you're going to a new venue. So preparation is the same, but obviously you need to change your levels depending on the level of cricket that you're umpiring. So when you get to test matches, it's much easier. The guys know where they need to draw the line when it comes to chirping and things like that. Whereas at the club level, it's a lot harder to manage, because you need to step in. The players don't respect you as they do at international level. Maybe at club levels, the code of conduct is not as strictly enforced as it is at international level. If they overstep, we have footage available, so that's easier to report the player. Whereas at club level, it's your story, his story, and the third side to the story. So there's always, there's no finality, or they always argue, so nobody's right, and you always have an issue when it comes to reporting people. And associations don't have enough proof, and they probably just sweep it under the carpet and just let the guy play, and he just wants to have fun on a weekend. So preparation is the same for me at any level. It's just the levels of cricket. I must tell you that when I do a school game or a club game, I feel a lot nervous than doing an international game, because now, especially if the players know me, then the expectation is high that you know you cannot make an error and that. So it is a bit harder the lower you go. And you guys will know when you get to Division 1 and you're doing a Division 2, there's a difference in the level of cricket there as well. So it's just for you to maintain your standards, irrespective of which level you're umpiring. At the end of the day, the bowler is going to run, he's going to bowl the ball, and the batsman's going to hit the ball. And it's going to be the same at any level that you play. And you just need to apply the laws consistently and the best of your ability. Over.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Palis. Now we're going to go on to the questions in the chat box. I've answered a couple of admin questions asked by Datrim, so I'm not going to go over those. I am going to mention a question about a hit the ball twice law. We will deal with it in more detail in lecture 6 on the 19th of October. But Abdullah, if you can maybe just give a quick answer to this one. Datrim says, in one of my under 11 matches, a batter attempts a sweep, but he accidentally hits it twice and the ball goes behind the wicketkeeper instead of to mid-wicket. There was an appeal. It was clearly not out, but I allowed the runs. I'm not sure whether that was the right call to allow the runs, because the law states you cannot score off a legal second strike. Let me know your views on it, please. Dula?
Thank you so much for your question, Datrim. Hit the ball twice is one of the modes of dismissals, and one of the important words in this law is willfully hitting the ball a second time. So the important word is willfully hitting the ball a second time. And if you do willfully hit the ball a second time, so yes, on appeal, you can be given out. There is an exception where you are allowed to willfully hit the ball a second time, but that's only to protect your wicket. But if the batter was not protecting his or her wicket, and the batter willfully hits the ball a second time, then on appeal, that batter should be given out, hit the ball twice. So in your question, you clearly put the word accidentally hitting the ball a second time. So in this case, this batter is not out because it was accidental, and the runs the runs then should be allowed in this case. If there was a case where the batter hit the ball a second time while protecting his wicket, and then they decide to run, those runs are not allowed. But in your case, you made the right decision where you allowed for the runs, and the decision was also not out because this was the batter accidentally hitting a ball a second time. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Perfectly answered. Next question, also from Datrim. A player wants a quick toilet break. Will it constitute a wholly acceptable reason for a substitute? That's the first question. And the second question is, will any penalty time apply? We will deal with this in Law 24 next week. But if you can just give us 2 quick answers there again, please, Abdullah.
Thanks again for your question, Datrim. And I'm going to cover what the laws of cricket say about this. So when it comes to substitute, the law allows a substitute fielder, if one of the nominated players become injured or ill. Those are the first 2 criteria. If there's an injury to the player or players became ill, the umpire shall then allow a substitute fielder. And then secondly, for a wholly acceptable reason, the umpire shall also allow a substitute fielder. So that's as per the laws of cricket. So now, when it comes to a wholly acceptable reason. And you can just imagine this will differ from umpire to umpire. So for one umpire, a certain instance will be a wholly acceptable reason, and for another umpire, a certain incident might not be a wholly acceptable reason. So what the ICC then did was, the ICC just gave us a bit of guidance here, just in terms of the interpretation of a wholly acceptable reason, because it's so broad, the law just speaks about wholly acceptable reason. So the ICC in the almanac that they do give us yearly, where they said when it comes to a wholly acceptable reasons, this should be limited to like genuine emergencies. Things like, and they do actually clarify, things like, and the words they use was comfort breaks, and comfort breaks are toilet breaks, things like going for a shower, going for a massage, going for an ice bath. Those are examples of comfort breaks, and it includes toilet breaks. This should not be seen as a wholly acceptable reason. So here the ICC guided us here. So, excuse me. So to answer your question, if a player wants to go off for a toilet break, and according to the guidance that we received from International Cricket Council, we should not allow a substitute for this. But that's in theory. But what I can tell you in practice, and it happens week in, week out, players do know this, that for a toilet break, they're not allowed a substitute. So what players actually do is they come to the umpire and they say, umpire, I need to go off to have my ankle strapped. I'll probably be off for just one over. And because the fielder wants strapping for, let's say, the injured ankle, you'll allow that's an injury, so you'll allow the substitute. But actually, the fielder is not going off for strapping. The fielder is actually going off to go to the toilet. But as per the law, for comfort breaks, toilet breaks, substitute is not allowed. But the players do get around the law by going off for strapping. So in terms of any penalty time that needs to be served. So when it comes to penalty time, according to the laws of cricket, any time that a player goes off for an injury or an illness or a wholly acceptable reason, that time needs to be served before the player can bowl again. So even if a player goes off for 3 minutes or 2 minutes or even 1 minute, that penalty time needs to be served. So that player needs to be on the field once he or she returns, needs to be on the field before that player can bowl again. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. And the next question is from Greg. He asks, once you pass level 1, how long should you umpire before you can do level 2? Greg, there used to be a minimum requirement of 5 matches before you can do level 2, but Cricket South Africa did away with that requirement. So what we actually do at Western Province Cricket Umpires Association is we schedule our courses such that we can do level 1, 2, and 3 all in the same year. So next year, our level 2 course will be in March, and then you can do your level 3 in April. There is no time limit or experience requirement between the different levels anymore. The reason we don't have a level 2 and 3 coming up now is because our season has just started, and so we reserve the winter months of April, May, June, July, August, and September for all of our training to take place in terms of level 1, 2, and 3. Next question, and I see that most of you answered correctly on my scenario of a fast bowler bowling a short pitch delivery, hitting the striker's helmet and going on the full over the boundary into the stands. 4 leg byes is the correct answers. So you would signal leg byes first, and then you would signal boundary 4. There is somebody who wrote 6 leg byes. That is incorrect. Why? Because the law specifically says a boundary 6 can only be scored off the bat. So it would look very strange when you signal 4 leg byes, even though the ball has flown over the boundary with no bounce. But that is the correct decision, 4 leg byes. I'm scrolling down the chat box to find more questions. We've gone through the questions addressed to Palis. Next question is from Ebi Patrick Aga. When is the square leg umpire calling a no ball or run out? Abdullah, do you want to give us a brief summary of the striker's end umpire's duties as well as decision making on modes of dismissals, please?
Thank you for your question, Ebi. When it comes to mode of dismissals, there are 9 mode of dismissals, Ebi. And of those 9 mode of dismissals, 3 of them falls under the jurisdiction of the striker's end umpire. Which are those 3? Firstly, stumping. Striker's end is in the best position to call a stumping. Secondly, hit wicket. And thirdly, run out at the striker's end. So those are the 3 modes of dismissals that falls under the jurisdiction of the striker's end umpire, and the striker's end umpire needs to make those 3 calls when it comes to those types of modes of dismissals. When it comes to no balls, so you do work as a team, Ebi. So when I say working as a team, bowlers in and strikers in needs to work together as a team when it comes to calling no balls. There are certain no balls that the strikers in is in a better position to call than the bowlers in umpire, but still you work as a team and either umpire can call it, but those type of no balls that the strikers in is in a better position to make that call. They are no balls that is above waist height, because the strikers in umpires has a side-on view of it, whereas the bowlers in has a front-on view, side-on view. It's much better position to make that call. So strikers in, when it comes to no ball above waist height, strikers in is in a much better position to call it. Although there's nothing stopping the bowlers in from calling it, but what point I'm trying to make is strikers in is in a much better position, and we will go into more detail on Wednesday with regards to no balls. Secondly, when it comes to fielders behind on the onside, strikers in should make that call. Nothing stopping the bowlers in from making that call. According to the laws of cricket, you are only allowed maximum of 2 fielders behind the popping crease on the onside. The strikers in is in the best position to make that call. The law actually guides us by saying the strikers in should make the call, but if the bowlers in do pick it up, nothing debarring the bowlers in umpire from making that call. Also, when it comes to the laws of cricket, if you bowl a ball above head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease, according to the laws of cricket, that should be called a no ball. Again, a side-on view is the better view. Who's got the side-on view? The strikers in umpire has got the side-on view and is in the best position, according to the laws of cricket, to call a no ball that was above head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease. Tom, I'm not sure if I left out any other no-balls that strikers in my call. I mean, I can include fielding infringements, but those falls under 50 and 20 over cricket. We're covering the laws of cricket here, so do you think I should mention fielding infringements?
I think you can mention them in the no-ball law next lecture on Wednesday. Dula?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Copy that.
Thanks, you.
Phil.
Matsepo asks, there was a women's match, I think it was West Indies against England, where the bowler noticed that the non-striker had moved from her crease, and instead of bowling, she stumped the batter. What are your thoughts on that? Matsepo, I think the match you are referring to is England against India at Lord's Cricket Ground a few weeks ago, where Deepti Sharma, the India all-rounder, ran out the non-striker who had left her crease early. It is known as a man-cad dismissal, running out of the non-striker. We will deal with it. It is now under Law 38 run out, and the lawmakers moved that law from Law 41, which is unfair play, to Law 38, which is run out, making it a normal mode of dismissal. The onus is now on the non-striker to stay in his or her crease until the ball is released, or at the point where the ball would normally be released. Okay, so previously there needed to be a warning given to the non-striker, but the normal run out does not require a warning, so now no warning is required to run out the non-striker if they leave the crease before the ball has been delivered. What I tend to do is if I see a non-striker leaving his or her ground early before the release point, they often do that because they are not watching the bowler bowling. I'm not sure why non-strikers don't watch the ball out of the bowler's hand, but it's more often than not they are not watching the bowler. They are just looking straight ahead and just timing the leaving of the crease depending on hearing of the footsteps of the bowler. So I just mentioned to the non-striker, you are leaving the ground before the ball has been delivered. Be careful, because if the bowler runs you out, no warning is required and you will be out. And typically what happens is the non-striker will then start watching the ball being delivered by the bowler. Okay, so that's my practical advice to you if you see a non-striker leaving the crease early before the ball is bowled. Adil asks, hello Tom, if I may ask, if a delivery is overhead high, is it a no ball or a wide? Abdullah has just mentioned, according to the laws of cricket, it is a no ball. However, the playing conditions for all international cricket, if a bouncer, a short pitch delivery is bowled and the ball goes over head height of the striker standing upright at the crease, then the either umpire will call and signal wide. So it depends on your playing conditions, and the playing conditions always overrule the law. If the playing condition is silent on this, for your particular tournament or match, then you refer to the law. And I know that in England, if I'm not mistaken, in the 100, they are playing the law whereby a short pitch delivery going over a bowler's head is a no ball, not a wide. Okay. Venkat says there was an incident where a batter was bowled by Jofra Archer. It hit the top of the bails and the ball flew and landed beyond the boundary. If that was a no ball, it will be treated as a no ball plus a boundary 4. Is that correct? Yes, Venkat, if that was a no ball, it would be 1 for the no ball and it would be 4 byes. Because there was no bat involved, then you cannot have a boundary 6. And the ball did not hit the person of the striker either. So it would be no ball 1 plus byes, 4 byes signaled. Okay. That is all the questions we have in the chat box. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to ask, either about the laws covered today or the exam, or to Palis about anything cricket related? If not, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Allahudien Palekar for joining us for this particular lecture, and thank all of you for your interaction in terms of asking questions to him and to us related to the laws of cricket and also umpiring techniques on the field. That is how we learn, and that is how we grow as umpires. Thank you all very much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your
Tom,
night
there is another question in the chat box from someone. I think it's for Palis.
Okay.
Is Palis still on the line, Tom?
I'm not sure, Abdullah. I'm in the, if I'm in the chat box, I can't see the list of attendees. Palis, are you still on the line? I assume he's not. So I will give this question to you from Karthik. What would be your pre-delivery routine, Abdullah?
Thanks for your question, Karthik. So I do the following pre the delivery. So I do have my setup. I do have how I stand. So, and I do have a mark that is directly behind or in line with middle stump. So what I do is the batsman is usually my cue. As soon as I see the batter gets ready, get into position, I then do, if it's a one-day game, I do my field checks. I then have a glance at my colleague. I stand with my hands in front of my body, so that is my trigger movement. So the moment I put my hands in front of my body, that is when I switched on, and that is when I start focusing. So that is my pre-delivery routine, and I do that routine for every single delivery, including when I'm standing at the striker's end. So I have the same routine at bowler's end and at striker's end.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Abdullah. And yes, it's quite important to develop a routine that is comfortable for you and also is repeatable, because good routines breed good consistency. And all players ever ask from umpires is for good, consistent decision making. So once again, thank you all very much for your attendance and interaction. We shall meet up again on Wednesday. Have a good night further. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good evening.